Okay, enough time has passed and I want to sit down and talk about this series like an adult, because originally I was hating on it. I didn't think it was going to be any good, and I had the same issue actually with Agatha All Along, which turned out to be a pretty good series, and this one is too. So the story of Skeleton Crew, for those of you who haven't already watched it, focuses on 4 kids in the Star Wars universe, and they go off on an adventure. They accidentally get themselves sent into space because they're playing around with some things that they shouldn't. They meet a bunch of pirates, and then they get mixed up in some very naughty things, and then they have to try and figure out how the hell do we get home. Now, I will say each of the main characters, the kids that we follow along the journey, there's sort of 5 characters really that are front and center throughout this whole thing. All 4 of the kids have remarkably unique characteristics and personalities, and their acting ability individually was probably better than all of the actors combined in The Acolyte, which I was very shocked at. Normally when you're working with child actors, it is incredibly difficult to maintain and keep a good performance, especially when you're surrounded by green screens and you really have to act like you're flying a spaceship, or you're in a dogfight in the middle of space, or you're being chased by pirates that are going to tear you to pieces. Like this is a very difficult thing to do, and I feel like all of the actors that were involved did a fantastic job. And then I think it's either episode 2 or 3, we're introduced to Jude Law's character, and Jude Law's character, it's Jude Law in Star Wars. There's no going about that. It's like Dwayne Johnson in every Dwayne Johnson movie. It's the same kind of feeling, the same kind of aesthetic. But here's the thing with Jude Law's character, we don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. He says that he's a Jedi, and we can see him using the Force to some extent, but we don't get entirely how. Like, is it a trick? He certainly doesn't have the aura of a Jedi. He makes one quote, actually, I think it's near episode 7 or 8, and it's actually a quote that Qui-Gon says, which brings a lot, Star Wars fans are recognizing that, like, oh, so this guy's actually got some experience. And I'm not going to spoil it, but he does have some kind of experience with the Jedi. I'm going to try not to spoil too much of this, but it has been out for quite a bit of time. And I will say that the way that they did Jude Law's character, there's moments where you're like, okay, he's a pirate, but he's also a Jedi. Is he good or bad? We don't know. And throughout the story, you genuinely think that he is going to end up changing his ways and being on the good team and helping the kids and being the hero and being part of this, the protagonist mission. Nope, he doesn't do that. He tricks them to get what he wants. He gets what he wants, and then he remains the bad guy, and he sees his objective all the way through, which I thought was very interesting for Star Wars to do that. Normally they like the big character arc. I genuinely liked seeing the bad guy stay the bad guy and see how menacing he could be, seeing and knowing that mystery of his character. We don't even know anything about his backstory until the final episode, and I really like that. It felt like we were genuinely invested in his story from start to finish, which was great. In terms of acting, I don't think that Jude Law necessarily wanted to shine as an actor in this part. I've liked him in other roles, but he definitely didn't strike me as somebody who was going out of their way to steal the performance from everybody else. He was good, but compared to some of the kids, I feel like the kids were acting better than he was, and that's no skin off his back. I just think that the kids were phenomenal throughout the series. In terms of story, I feel like it started off pretty well. It was just so fast-paced, which I'm not necessarily against. I get this is also for a younger audience. Kids these days, they think at 100 miles an hour, so I understand why you would need to try and get as much exposition out as quickly as possible, and maybe skip over certain bits of lore and leave all the juicy stuff to the very end. But there's certainly points where I'm like, okay, we can slow this down a little bit, maybe just add 10 minutes to the runtime of each episode so we can flesh things out a bit more. But it definitely feels like you're hurtling through this thing a million miles an hour. I feel like it had a good story, and I really liked, weirdly, it's probably because of all the drama that's been happening with Star Wars over the last couple of years, but I really liked that it was so disconnected from everything that's been going on. Like, I didn't want to see Ahsoka randomly pop up or have Vader stick his head in the project. I didn't want to see Obi-Wan come up, because I was just enjoying having this fun little piece of nostalgia that was separate from everything we had already known and been a part of. It was separate from the drama, and I feel like that's what Star Wars needs right now. Another thing that really caught me off guard was actually the cinematics and the CGI, because we all know Disney's incredible at what they do, but there's been a lot of times where they've had to cut corners over the past couple of years because they've been overworking people, or they've been somehow hundreds of million pounds over budget. Doesn't sound right to me, but the visuals in this show were actually very impressive. There's one scene in particular, 2 scenes in particular. The first of which is the kids are trying to escape from this like trash heap area, and they end up coming across a ship, and they're going to use the ship to get out of the planet and escape and do their thing and try and get back home. But the ship has this armor plating on it, and it looks super ugly, and it's worn down. But then all of a sudden they get captured by this machine thing, and it strips the armor off the ship. And as soon as that ship underneath is unveiled, it's like looking a beautiful vintage car. And like, it's the first time I've really admired a ship in Star Wars since, I think it was Padme's ship in The Phantom Menace, the one that's like completely chromed out and it's gorgeous and beautiful, and you look at it and you think, oh my god. Or the first time that I saw an X-Wing or a TIE fighter, it was just such a cool experience. That's the first time I felt that in years, and I loved it. And the whole sequence there was absolutely phenomenal. They even did a behind the scenes thing of how they created some of the big scary monstrous creatures, and they put so many Easter eggs and references. There's a little R2-D2 on this giant trash monster, and I love little things like that, and I appreciate genuine creativity in Star Wars again. It felt good. Then the other scene that really caught my eye, there was one thing in the first couple of episodes where they're just venturing into space for the first time, and again, the cinematics and the way that they do everything is just incredible. Now, naturally, I do have a couple of gripes with it, the first of which is the fact that nobody has seen it. I think this is one of the worst reviewed shows on Disney+, or at least the least watched, and I understand it, because as a Star Wars fan, I was apprehensive going into it. I didn't think I was going to, and then I watched the first episode and I got hooked from there. But I think people are just so done with Star Wars right now. Like, we don't want any more, because we are just so sick of seeing this franchise that we have loved and adored over the last couple of years. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox about it. I've got a whole video called the Disney Problem, which you're welcome to go and watch. I'll link it somewhere, description or in a card. But there's just an element of Star Wars right now that people just don't want to be involved with, because it's just been miss after miss, characters being discarded, people that we have grown up loving, they're having their characters diminished because somebody thinks it's a good idea to make Star Wars the most woke franchise in the world. And it's a shame, because I feel like people who genuinely grew up with The Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars and all that, they could really appreciate this series, but it's hard to appreciate it when the company that's making it has broken your heart so many times. It's like having an abusive ex saying, oh, hey, listen, I did this, I got you some flowers. Are we good now? Is everything forgotten about? But I don't know, man. I'm hoping they maintain this. There's a couple of weird little things at the ending as well. I feel like they were hoping for a second season because it wraps up so quick. Like, I enjoyed the ending. I feel like a lot of people are kind of bitching about it because they're like, oh, it wrapped up so quickly. How are we meant to? I feel like the ending we got was fine. There's a lot of mystery still involved. Like, the people of the planet where the kids come from, their people are under the belief that Jedi are bad. Who placed those orders? Was it Palpatine? Is that why there's millions and millions of credits sitting on this planet? Because they're funding him? What's going to happen with Jude Law's character? What's going to happen with the kids? Are they going to become space explorers, or are they just going to, go to school now? I don't know. A lot of mysteries, and in a way I hope that we get a second season, because I would like to learn more about what happens in this particular part of the universe, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think they're definitely going to go back to the drawing board. There's a lot of drama going on with the new Rey movie, so we'll see how things go. But I just wanted to talk about it and say that if you're a fan of the old Star Wars stuff, maybe give this one a shot. Watch the first couple of episodes, see if it's for you. I completely get it if you're done with Star Wars. I was very close to being done as well, and they've hooked me in just for a little bit longer. All right, I'm going to wrap this one up here. I love you, faces. Why does my PC always die when I'm in the middle of recording? Anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up here. Next week, I want to talk about Severance, and there's a couple of other movies coming out, which I'm excited for. I also still haven't seen Moana 2. So that's something we can talk about as well. I love your faces. You're amazing and beautiful, and I will catch you in the next one.